Greetings, spiritual warriors. Welcome to this Thursday night's program. I hope you've been working with managing your anger and your anxiety. We brought to you from Bhakti Tirtha Swami, Spiritual Warrior 4, Conquering the Enemies of the Mind. So tonight we're going to begin another Spiritual Warrior book. I'm giving you a taste. There's so much in these books, but I've been giving you a taste from each one. And tonight we're going to get a taste from Spiritual Warrior 5, Making the Mind Your Best Friend. Spiritual Warrior 4, if you recall, was Conquering the Enemies of the Mind. And we just dealt with two of those for the weeks that we were on with that. So we're introducing Spiritual Warrior 5, Making the Mind Your Best Friend. Those of you who may have been with us at the beginning, remember we started with the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. And the first quality was sense gratification and mastering the mind. And if you recall, if we started with the points given us in mastery of the mind, we were able to move through. So the mind is a component that's very important in our lives, but it's how we master it and control the senses. So what I'm going to do, though, I found this, rather than just jump into chapter 1, the foreword for this book was written by a psychologist teacher at the Center for Counseling and Psychotherapy Education in UK, United Kingdom, London. And I just want to quote a few of his points he brought out about this book. And he states, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami inspires us to be spiritual warriors in this life. And that has been the purpose of presenting these books to you and the concept. Remember, we say it's presented to help us to get to know who we get, really grounded in knowing who we really are. And this personality says he inspires us to be spiritual warriors in this life. And it's like following the tradition of Arjuna, the great warrior in the Battle of Kurukshetra that we find in the Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. But what he says is that in this book, Bhakti Tirtha Swami achieves this by updating the metaphors and language in a way that will reach out to many people in today's world. And it's a message of love, faith, and devotion that constantly inspires. And that reminds you of those are the weapons of a spiritual warrior. The battle of life requires the development of such a mastery of the mind. And by mastering our minds and channeling our desires through short-term goals that we personally value, a gradual spiritual confidence emerges. Once again, what motivates us in this struggle is the love of God, which is our purpose for being here in this material world. And this doctor goes on in saying, life's problems may affect us, but instead of being negative, we can try to see the positive and see a valuable lesson in every situation. And I think Bhakti Tirtha Swami has presented that to us in our past study. every situation. There's a purpose for everything, and everything is to help us to grow. Even when we're stuck and we don't realize it, the situation of stuckness begins to teach us something. By overcoming this in ourselves, we overcome the problems of suffering and duality. And if you recall, each section we've read through, Bhakti Tirtha Swami tells us about introspection, look within. We must go within ourselves in order to become, as this person says, unstuck, to help us become unstuck. So he says he found this book growing on me as I proceeded, realizing the vital importance of faith, devotion, and surrender on the spiritual path. And that if we are to follow such a path successfully as part of our everyday life, we really need to develop the qualities of the spiritual warrior. So hopefully you all are been on this path with us for weeks, or if you're just coming in first time or first couple of weeks, all the past programs, classes, can be found on Krishna.com, view TV or video, and just click on Spiritual Warrior if you want to catch up with where we've been. And hopefully you'll stay with us and see where we're going, because it's an exciting journey. Now, I also want to bring you some words from the introduction that I found interesting, and this is from a doctor also in the United Kingdom, London. And just a few points she states. I'm saying it's a she, because we have a devotee who went to graduate school in London and graduated in psychiatry, I believe. All too often, the society we live in has taught us to deal with the affliction of the mind with a Band-Aid. With a Band-Aid approach, wherein we try to make improvement, even if only temporarily. But like any other conflict or crisis, a conflict of our own mind is a great opportunity for personal growth. There it is again. There's another person speaking. So please realize whatever's going on, and if you're hearing this, see it as an opportunity. Hopefully you're gaining knowledge and some understanding. This personality states, our mind is our constant companion. Remember in Mastery of the Mind in Spiritual Warrior 3, it says it knows us better than anybody else because it's always there. Our mind is our constant companion as we advance or regress. It can either function as the key that opens the door to the next level, or the bolt that locks the door. Many have used and will continue to use artificial means such as drugs to achieve altered states of awareness. But these can only bring about a temporary change, along with the many uncomfortable side effects. So what we're saying here, this person is saying, throughout all our waking hours, and even while we sleep, Providence presents us with innumerable opportunities. There's that word again. Opportunities to transform and access our divine pure nature. And again, if we've been listening, Bhakti Tirtha Swami's been telling us that we are divine beings, right? And it comes through in so many of the different sections that we have shared with you. And hopefully you're imbibing that and understanding and striving to have that so fixed in your mind that the mind can become your best friend. For the majority of us, she says, our mind and senses are constantly distracting us from doing so. It is through strengthening the mind, our intelligence with spiritual knowledge, and allowing our senses to experience and engage in spiritual practices that we can transform the mind. And again, we are getting that knowledge through these Spiritual Warrior series books and just the presentations that I've taken to share with you. And don't forget, if you want these books, you can get them all at Krishna.com store. They're available if you don't have them already. And if you have them already, I hope you're taking them out and following us and continuing to read to increase your spiritual knowledge and understand. So what this person who wrote this forward just reminds us that Bhakti Tirtha Swami has written his book. We went through Spiritual Warrior 4, Conquering the Enemies of the Mind. But this book now titled, which we're reading now, Spiritual Warrior 5, Making the Mind Our Best Friend. He's given us a wonderful set of tools to be able to turn the afflictions of the mind into a key to unlock the door rather than a bolt that keeps it locked, so that we can become happier and more fulfilled as each day of our life goes by. Once again, he has been kind enough to share with us his expertise in applying spiritual solutions to material problems. And I like this last section where she says, and I've been trying to get it across, if we can imbibe and practice even a few of the principles outlined in this book and outlined in that book and that book. We've been through 2 Spiritual Warrior, 2 Transforming Lust into Love, Spiritual Warrior 3, Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times, and Spiritual Warrior 4, Conquering the Enemies of the Mind. If any of that you've heard, you can imbibe and practice just a few of those principles. Use them with whatever, what she says, biological, psychological knowledge that we have. It will enable us to not only transform our lives, but we'll be able to serve others better. And isn't that what it's about, a spiritual warrior? Helping others to transform, helping others to know who they are as spiritual beings, being compassionate and caring for others. So it's important to imbibe and practice what you're getting. And we'll be able to serve others by empowering them to transform their lives as well, because ours will have been transformed by our practice and imbibing. Because we cannot offer to others what we don't have ourselves or haven't gotten ourselves. So we're going to turn the page now, and I pray that you will keep an open heart and mind, knowing that what you're about to hear can change your life, as all that we've been offering can. So we're going to go to chapter 1 of Spiritual Warrior 5, Making the Mind Your Best Friend. And chapter 1 is called Internal Dialogue. Everybody has that, goes through that. Let's see what we're going to get from this. Now the first thing he does is quote from Shastra, scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, our ancient scriptures brought to us by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. He's quoting here, and he says, this is a quote, "Therefore, my dear king, the living entity who has a subtle mental covering develops all kinds of thoughts and images because of his previous body. Take this from me as certain. There is no possibility of concocting anything mentally without having perceived it in the previous body." Okay? What I did, well, you know, most of the verses in Bhagavatam have a purport, and Srila Prabhupada gives us some insight. And I wanted to share that purport with you. Go a little deeper into this one. He says, actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the supreme enjoyer. When a living entity wants to imitate him, he's given a chance to satisfy his false desire to lord it over material nature. That is the beginning of his downfall. As long as he is within his material atmosphere, as long as we're in this material world, he has a subtle vehicle in the form of the mind, which is the stockpile of all kinds of material desires. Such desires become manifest in different bodily forms. Now here, Srila Narada Muni is speaking to a king to request the king to accept the fact from him, because Narada is an authority. This is why when we read these Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, authorized, the conclusion is that the mind is the storehouse of our past desires. And we have this present body due to our past desires. Similarly, whatever we desire in this present body will be expressed in a future body. Thus, the mind is the source of different kinds of bodies. Okay? So, let's go on and see what Bhakti Tirtha Swami has to say. The first section is entitled Beyond the Externals. Okay. Okay. He says, we all have an ongoing internal dialogue, or internal conversations, that develop from the aggregate of our life experiences, and that we constantly repeat to ourselves. The many people in our lives often give us specific labels. Consequently, We maintain these constant conversations within us that dictate the way we respond and behave at all times. This internal dialogue is very significant because our external behavior is only a small aspect of our real selves. For instance, during most conversations, we receive only 7% of the message from the content itself. We receive 38% of the message from the voice, pitch, tone, and sounds, and 55% from the nonverbal communication, such as facial gestures and body movements. The internal dialogues of the speaker as well as the receiver affect all areas of communication. Have you ever noticed when you're having some conversation, so much is going on inside? Nevertheless, most people are only aware of the externals, which obviously makes communication and our relationships in general very difficult. Most importantly, by identifying too much as physical beings, we overlook the deeper aspects of our real identity. And again, he's been pursuing this thought of who we really are as spiritual beings, eternal beings. And of course, if you've studied any Vedic his culture and studies and books, first thing, you're not the body. You're more than the body. Okay, now he's going to talk about the influence of karma. Modern sociology and psychology both acknowledge that we are basically products of heredity and socialization, and that we are greatly affected by our parents' genes. However, most people do not understand as clearly that although these influences do in fact affect a person, they stem from karma in previous lifetimes. We have certain experiences in this life which directly affect our current thought process and the way in which we codify various aspects of our lives. However, our gender, race, language, and family, which have determined our current thought process, developed from experiences and relationships in past lives. This chain goes on and on. This recalls, I remember in, I don't know, during the 1980s, I guess, when the New Age movement, a lot of spiritual organizations were forming and different things. But I remember at that time it was a lot about karma and past lives, and some people were doing regression and all. But I remember reading a book, I don't know if it was on reincarnation or karma or past lives, but in reading that, somehow I got a sense of, not only did I not know what my past life was or actions that brought me where I was, but I think I was looking at my children, that possibly in a past life we had a relationship and that we were back together again to learn something. That was a realization I had. And it really, I found it made a slight difference in my, I want to use the word relationship, but attention to what was going on between my children and I. So he goes on here. We can understand the effect of karma by analyzing different causes and effects in just one lifetime. For instance, at the present moment, certain college students might be studying law, but their previous education in elementary and high school has enabled them to reach college and has played an important role in the development of their current intellect and understanding. The student's past knowledge also affects the way in which many factors played a role in the past. Let me read that again. The student's past knowledge also affects the way in which they use or develop their present knowledge. Furthermore, many factors played a role in the past. They spent many days in school and extensive time associating with peers, teachers, and their parents. All of these influences help create a person's mentality and will determine how he or she will continue to develop in the future. In terms of this example, it will determine the type of lawyer that each individual will become. Similarly, our current physical, psychological, and spiritual makeup develops from our previous experiences and associations. For instance, the quality of our sadhu sangha, or the quality of our association with saints and devotees, will have a tremendous effect on our spiritual strength and the quality of our devotion. I think that makes sense. What is that? Birds of a feather flock together. A person is known by the company he keeps. So if you're associating with someone of a higher consciousness who's studying and talking and your mind is developing on a higher level, you will definitely know that. And it will help you in your quality of life at that moment. Many wonderful factors determine the quality of devotional service, and many inauspicious influences also affect our current involvement in devotional life. Again, I'm recalling back to the quality in the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior, master the mind. I think the first step he gave in the his commentary or technique or tool for mastery of the mind is to see who is you're associating with. It's so important. Our next section is accessing our authentic self. Are there any questions at this point before I go on? Okay. Accessing our authentic self. Now, considering these factors, if we examine any given time period in our lives, we will remember many significant events and people who strongly affected our lives. If we combine all these influences, we will discover the person we have now become. This is important for us because as spiritualists, we are constantly trying to access our authentic self. We want to realize our eternal nature and understand that we actually have an eternal personality. Let me read that again. And this is what he's been stressing to us. It's about knowing who we really are, as he's calling it here, our authentic self, and to get past the designations put on us by others that we have accepted as us and are acting in that designation. He says we want to realize, let me go back, if we combine all these influences, that is of significant events and people who affected our lives, if we examine all these influences, we will discover the person we have now become. This is important for us because as spiritualists, here we are, spiritual warriors, talking to us, we are constantly trying to access our authentic self. We want to realize our eternal nature and understand that we actually have an eternal personality. The personality who we now identify as ourself is not our true self. It's not our real self. That personality is just a part of the external and subtle processing that goes on. Our previous lifetimes have led to this body, and both our past and current lives have led us to think, react, and respond in a certain way. Now, we can compare our situation to a drama. Pretend you are an actor in a one-man play, and you constantly have to change your outfit and speak differently. After a while, the audience may no longer know your real identity. And as the actor, you may even lose sight of your true self. You might soon forget which outfit to wear or what language you originally spoke. The same confusion happens to us in the material world. We have changed our bodies and our environments so many times. And in order to survive in this hostile environment, we have dressed in so many different ways. Many of those costumes and acts have now become a part of us. Another realization, reflection. I remember sitting in a class. I was at Gita Nagari at the time. And again, I can't remember all processes. I can just remember what came through for me. And it had to do with lifetimes, how many millions and trillions of years Brahma lived, but that he eventually had to die. But somehow I asked the question, and the presenter referred me to Canto 12. I wish I could remember the chapter. But anyway, I went there and I started reading, and again it was talking about these different lifetimes and who lived how many lifetimes and how many lifetimes. And suddenly, like a light went on, and I realized that I've been going through so many lifetimes. And boing, I'm being made aware now that I'm in this lifetime, and I'm getting some understanding and the possibility, as I remember hearing Prabhupada said, you can end the cycle of births and death this lifetime. So that was really an important moment for me, and a wonderful moment of realization and a commitment that I had a lot more work to do. Mm-hmm. So if we can get on that, understand this being here this time, in this material world, in this material body, ain't the first time. But we're here to learn and to grow, and we're being given, I love the word, an opportunity now. By hearing this and any other spiritual studies that you're doing. The next section is called Initiating Change. The author says, we want to address this issue because it is almost impossible to rise above such blocks unless we have enough honesty to identify the source and the problem in greater depth. Now remember what we're talking about, that we have changed our bodies and our environment so many times. And in order to survive in this hostile environment, we have dressed in so many different ways. Many of those costumes and acts have now become part of us.
There's a question.
There's a question.
Is there any authentic method of recalling past lives?
There are people who have studied and are able to take people back in regression. Again, as I remember, when I was in New York, there were so many of these. I hear you ask authentic. I don't know how authentic, although I just recently read a story in the news on the internet of a young boy who they had just regressed and gotten. He was a soldier in World War II, I believe, a pilot. And they were noticing as a child he did all these kinds of drawing of airplanes and bombs, and it looked so horrible. And somehow in talking about, he would talk about scenes and things that nobody knew about till they brought in a veteran who recognized what he said, and they took him back to where the planes landed, and he was able to recognize, and through it all they found that he was like a reincarnation, if you will, of a pilot who was killed during that time, just based on all the information he had. So I do know there are people who do that. Hypnosis. Hypnosis is a definite way of doing that. And I think if you study, look at Bhakti Tirtha Swami's biography, he mentions that a part of his dissertation when he was at Princess was doing hypnosis and taking people back or helping people to remember past lives. So I hope that helps you, because other than that, I don't know. But there are people who do that. Okay?
Yeah.
Who was that who asked the question?
His name is Kremlin.
Kremlin. Where is he? Could he tell us where his location is? I'm just curious about where people are. if he wants to. Okay? Okay. Thank you for being there, Kremlin, and taking the time to ask a question. Now, Bhaktitirtha Swami continues. We want to address this issue because it is almost impossible to rise above such blocks unless we have enough honesty to identify the source and the problems in greater depth. Many people in secular as well as in spiritual communities have so many problems and issues which stem from their current identity and their connection to these past negative influences of socialization and internal conversations. This topic interests me because I want to help. This is Bhaktitirtha Swami speaking. This topic interests me because I want to help more people change, enjoy spiritual life more, and have greater realizations, and have healthier associations. This is his concern, and this is why he's presenting this information to us. As we study people, we see that they sometimes have unhealthy disturbances in their spiritual lives as a result of accepting unhealthy labels from the past. For example, some people have a problem with authority, which might stem from childhood issues. In some cases, people have had alcoholic parents and might have suffered from sexual or physical abuse, which will continue to follow them until they sufficiently address the past and forgive. They need to own the past in certain ways so that they do not continue to carry it with them or allow the dialogue to continuously force them to act in unhealthy ways at the present time. Some spiritualists cannot really embrace Krishna or God consciousness sufficiently due to a problem with authority that could also manifest in many other relationships. The problems will result from this block that they have been carrying year after year. And in some cases, it even stems from a heavy trauma in a previous lifetime. We also need to discuss these topics for the protection of the children, because we want to encourage them sufficiently. For instance, distinct correlation exists between achievement in school and self-concept. Researchers surveyed a group of young children in grade school in order to understand the role that the environment plays in their development. The children, who all came from similar backgrounds and had similar IQs, were split into two groups. The teachers were told one group of children that they were high achievers, and they told the other group that they were normal, but might have problems with their work. Of course, the group of children who received the extra encouragement achieved higher. And again, you see what that is? The mind, we had said before, just accepts and rejects. You're told, the mind accepts, you accept, and then you act the part. Huh? Not only did they achieve higher during the evaluation, but after several years, those children also maintained that mentality. They performed more expertly in whatever they pursued. Those children who somehow felt that they could not achieve or could not rise to the challenge continued to have failures in their lives. This study shows us that we will often accept what the environment tells us and then act accordingly. So again, this is why these points and concepts we're getting of mastering the mind and understanding who you really are as an eternal spiritual being and who your connection is with God. And I remember I was reading the other night one of the qualities of fearlessness, and he says a spiritual warrior is fearless because he knows he's backed up by the Supreme, so he can't be intimidated. When we get that fixed, the consciousness of our connection, and then all that other stuff will just disappear, and we'll know who we are in that connection and feel strong and powerful. Now this next section is called Identify the Source, and I'm going to close with this, but if you have pen and paper handy, I would like you to take down what I'm going to read, because I'm going to leave it with you to study and practice, and not practice, and to meditate, contemplate, and maybe come up with something in a week. Listen to this. A significant aspect of spiritual life involves shedding many of the patterns that we have embraced as our identity. Shedding many of the patterns that we have embraced as our identity. And we begin to shed them by first identifying the source. You may want to try an exercise to help you examine your past with more precision. And he says here, you may want to try, and that's all I'm saying. You may want to try. Number 1, reflect on the 3 most significant people in your life who have left specific impressions on your consciousness. Number 2, reflect on the 3 most important choices you have made. Number 3, reflect on the 3 most significant events in your past. When you think of 3 categories, remember that some of them may not have been auspicious. Some outstanding events in your life, as well as past association, may have been very negative and have left deep impressions on your consciousness. Your association with certain people may have led to the development of some of your current bad habits and the acceptance of many of those negative labels. Some of those associations have caused you to develop the internal dialogue that you hear in your mind, which distracts you from your spiritual life. As you recognize the negative influences, it is important for you to separate yourself from the influence. On the other hand, if the influence was positive, you can feel grateful for any benefits you have received. Now, he says, please put this book aside for a few hours or a day as you write down or reflect on these 3 categories. After you have thought deeply about them, proceed with your reading of this chapter. And I will repeat them if you would like, because I'm going to end here if there are any questions or comments. Let me just repeat these in case you're interested to hear them again and may want to try the exercise. Number 1, reflect on the 3 most significant people in your life who have left specific impressions on your consciousness. Reflect on the 3 most important choices you have made. Reflect on the 3 most significant events in your life. And remember what he tells us, that your association with certain people may have led to development of some of your current bad habits and the acceptance of many negative labels. Some of these associations have caused you to develop an internal dialogue that you hear in your mind, which distracts you from your spiritual life. And that's what we're trying to find. What's distracting us from accepting our spiritual life, accepting who we really are, our authentic self, our real true self, and what may be keeping us from that. As you recognize the negative influences, it's important for you to separate yourself from the influence. And if you're working with your mind, because that's all you'll be doing, you can do that and know who you really are as a spiritual being. And a spiritual being cannot be affected. I used to say to people in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is talking to Arjuna about the spirit soul, the spirit, he says what? It can't be shot, it can't be drowned, it can't be cut into pieces. And the same thing, it can't have hurt feelings, it can't have angry feelings, because it's pure, it's spirit, it's a part and parcel of God. So as you identify yourself more with who your true self is, even if you go back in mind and you see this happen, as he said, you can separate yourself from that, because you have moved on from that and are moving away in an identity. So he says, develop internal to, you don't want to do anything that distracts you from your spiritual life. And as you recognize the negative influences, it's important for you to separate yourself from the influence. And on the other hand, if the influence was positive, you can be grateful for any benefits you have received. And being grateful is an important thing. If you're able to do this exercise, or you decide to do this exercise, you may come across some very positive events or things that influences, and you can just say thank you to that person or that situation within your mind and your heart. So I'm going to end the reading there tonight. Anybody want to say Haribo, or ask a question, or make a comment, or who's out there? Anybody we know? Bhuvan Mohan's there. It's hard. Thank you.
Carol.
Carol?
Yeah. And Kremlin is from Texas, originally from Ukraine.
Okay, welcome. Has he been here before?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And
Hope this is helpful. Who else?
Bhaktin Jess and someone named Tilak.
Tilak? Oh, okay. Any comment, question? Any of you were in on the managing your anger? Did you find any changes? Have you noticed changes? Have you been practicing? Have you been helping others? We've just been looking at so many wonderful concepts and qualities to purify our lives, to make it our purpose for being here, to let go. Any comments?
Bhakti Carol says, sometimes I have found that events that seemed negative, I can later understand to be positive situations.
That happens if you're paying attention. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that. Any other comments? No? Okay. Anybody want to say Haribo?
Everybody has said Haribo.
Okay, and Haribo to all of you. Thank you for being there. And you got your homework assignment. We'll see you next week. Oh, wait a minute. Is next Thursday Janmashtami? Oh, when? You're going to have 2 weeks for your homework. Where's the calendar? What's the date next week? Next week is the 13th, and it's Janmashtami. That's a big celebration, our yearly celebration, the appearance day of the Lord. I will not be here at 7 o'clock. I will be at the temple endeavoring to celebrate. So we will return on August 20th. Okay, so you'll have some time. You have time to order the books. If you don't have it, I hope it's, what we say, whetting your appetite to want to read more, know more, and to work on your authentic self and getting a firm, fixed in mind of who you really are as an eternal being, and fixed in your connection as a servant of the Lord. So it will return on August 20th to continue from Spiritual Warrior 5, making the mind your best friend. And if you're regular listeners, you've got a lot to work with, imbibe, and practice and share with others. And hopefully you'll have some feedback for me. All right? So, Hare Krishna. Krishna bless you, God bless you, and have a wonderful week.